DJ and PK, the NBA playoffs continue. What can we learn by watching the playoffs about how the Jazz could, would, or should rebuild?
I'd say draft really good players.
Would you say trade for really good players?
I don't know that you can. If you can, yes.
Because most of the players who are starring in this, and there's some exceptions, but most of the players who are starring in this were acquired. We're not drafted. Now, if you get the 1 or 2 pick in the draft and you can go out and get yourself Ant-Man or Holmgren and you hold on to him.
Throw Williams in there.
Ed Williams.
We had on Barry Trammell last week, and to preview the series, obviously.
Sure. Talk Thunder basketball.
He brought up an interesting note. None of the bench players were drafted for OKC.
A long line of undrafted players there. Diamonds in the rough.
Caruso.
Right.
And obviously they traded for him.
Right.
Dort starts, but
he was undrafted.
Role player. So you have to do everything possible. Every option that is available to you, you must try to build that way. You're not going to have 5 superstars. And we talked about a Royce O'Neal and a Joe Ingles. When the last good Jazz team was built, they had sprinkled throughout the roster various ways to accumulate talent. And I was thinking about this over the weekend because you're always thinking about what you're going to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. And marketing now becomes an extremely valuable piece because if you are in win now mode, throw the Warriors in there, whomever, or you want to take a significant step, put San Antonio. Philadelphia would be in win now mode with Embiid, Maxey. I assume Paul George would be available. We talked about this last week. We had Tim Lacombe in, and you can address it too. Would you trade Markkanen for the 3rd pick and you take back George's contract? We were doing it 2 weeks ago, and Yak brought this up to me that Locke was talking about taking on Damian Lillard. Mm-hmm. You're not looking to win now. So Markkanen here has an opportunity. If you're the Spurs, if you add him rather than take the pick,
it accelerates the timeline.
And Lacombe brought up an excellent point. If you can get 2 top 5 picks, that accelerates your rebuild
100%.
Because you bring in 2 guys that can get the experience in the 25-26 season. So as I was thinking about all the stuff that we talked about last week, it really gets me excited to see what the Jazz can do. The last 2 years, they've basically held serve in terms of what they had available draft picks and what they drafted players at those picks. There were no moves. Now, this year, would you go a 3rd year in a row? My gut instinct says no, that they will be doing some maneuvering. They're not going to get themselves out of the rebuild, so we're not looking at 45 wins next year.
But you can speed it up.
You can get, and then you can really see progress because if you got the 3rd pick, say, and the 5th pick, wow, that's higher than any picks that you've had the last 6. So you can't assume it, even though I'm going to say you're going to assume
Let's
that
go
the
ahead and
players
assume
are better.
that they draft well, and they get better players.
Right.
And this is supposed to be a better draft.
You need some high-end players here.
The thing with Markkanen, and when my first reaction, even though I was on vacation, every once in a while there's a little time, and I'd look at whatever social media, and you put stuff up on Facebook, see what the show's talking about.
I got it, yeah.
And
we're
my
never
immediate
immune from this.
Right. My immediate reaction when I saw the Markkanen is, that's a good deal. But they can't make a good deal. They have to make the best deal. You don't get that many opportunities to move a guy who's a 20, maybe, depending on 25, but certainly a 20-point-a-game scorer, and he's 7 feet long. I mean, he just takes away passing lanes when he sticks his arms out. So he's got real value. You don't get to trade him a bunch of times. So it's not enough to take a good deal, and I like the idea of getting the 3rd pick, but they've got more info than we have. They've been out watching the 2026 draft. If they think they can hold on to Markkanen for a year and use him to move up in the 2026 draft, and if they like those players a lot more, how much do they like these guys 3, 4, 5? I mean, I assume you can get good players there, but if you can wait a year and get a great player,
No, I don't
Ainge is the king of patience. You don't want to wait. You don't. There's no
because
guarantee.
the lottery's a crapshoot. We already just saw it.
It is, and you don't know if you'll have motivated sellers. You know that whole baseball, are you a buyer or are you a seller? Are you going to have someone who's going to be motivated to sell draft picks next year? You may not. And so you may have this. And so this is all the stuff that they've got away. I did on the surface like the idea of, okay, you take this contract, but you get the third pick and you get to draft 3 and 5 and what's supposed to be a good draft. And then you trust these guys to find the right 2 players in the draft. And we know that a lot of times the wrong players get drafted and then the right guy goes at 11 or 12. Or what was it, Curry, 7?
6, I think.
Okay. I mean,
I think Flynn and Rubio went.
They went 4 or 5. Yeah. Whenever Minnesota was done drafting the wrong guy, the Warriors stepped in and drafted the right guy.
Yeah, and it took Minnesota a decade to get out of it.
Right, and we've seen the Jazz whiff under previous management, not this team. On the third and fifth pick, there are no guarantees.
The previous management score.
Right, on
Mitchell and Gobert.
27.
We're great.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, off the charts.
And plucking Royce O'Neal out of wherever he was in Europe was good. There was a Baylor connection there.
There was.
And so
he played pickup with Dennis's son.
And he was a nice player. I mean, he was not a superstar, but you needed those types of players. We were constantly reminded by watching Denver and Phoenix this year. Yeah. So
you got to have the role guys.
You look at that. I'm hesitant to wait if you feel you've got something really positive this season, this offseason. Go. Because then certainly at 3, you take best player available.
I got good news for you. I do think they're motivated to do it. Not that I know that, but watching Lauri Markkanen wait and to sign his deal so that he wouldn't be eligible to be traded until after the deadline, which locked him in for a year, I think there was a little bit of the Kyle Whittingham. You always tell the story about Kyle's proud that his, kids went to the same school and they didn't have to move around the way he did with his dad coaching. And Lowry knows he can't guarantee that, but he knows also he doesn't have to split the family up or pull the kids out mid-season. So he locked him in for a year. But I think he thinks he's not just on the trade block. He's next up. So I'd be surprised if they waited. There might be a good argument to wait, but I expect them to do something.
Yes.
And I don't have a lot to go on there, so that's more gut instinct than is reporting. But I do think Markkanen waited, and that was for a reason. And so I figure he knows something, and I'm betting on that. And he hasn't told me anything.
And he can get in a good situation. He goes to San Antonio. That's a good situation.
That is a good situation.
I don't see a situation where he goes that's bad.
I think it's going to cost so much to get him that the team that gets him will probably be a good situation.
He's better than the third pick. I can argue he's better than the second pick in the next 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. Easily, right. I can argue that.
So if he's going to the Warriors or the Spurs, the Sixers, if all their guys get hurt again, then it's not a good situation.
Well, it's 2 guys, but you get rid of George.
And right, George would be out. So
Embiid.
If Embiid is healthy, he's in a good situation. If Embiid is hurt, then he's not.
Yeah, at minimum, he's in a better situation than in terms of winning. It's a good situation here. He loves the outdoors. I don't know if you knew that.
I've heard that.
And so it's a stable organization. They take care of you very well, blah, blah, blah. They're just not winning right now. The rebuild prevents them. And his age, if he was 23, it'd be another story.
It would be. But his age doesn't match up with the way this rebuild is going. The only way his age matches up with the way the rebuild is going is if they go all in for somebody who's in that 24 to 30 range, and it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
I don't know if there's anybody out there that would make that big of a difference.
So in that case, he and Collins don't match up, and are there deals coming?
And we were talking about this last week. Kevin Durant's in that situation, but who would I rather have right now? Durant's a better player than Markkanen.
But you can have Markkanen for longer.
Yeah, you can have at least 5 years.
Right.
Plus, his body isn't, in terms of minutes that Locke
always says, don't worry about the age, look at the minutes. Well,
he's
never played big minutes.
These last few years. Played 47 games this
You
year.
can argue he's been a permanent part-time player.
Yeah.
Even in Cleveland and Chicago, he wasn't playing massive minutes.
No,
So-
he's missed. I think the most games he's ever played is like 61. I'd have double checked that. So his body should be there. I mean, basically, this was a practice time this season for the Finnish national team. He didn't play much at all. I said with Scotty last week that the Jazz had a 47% chance of getting the fifth pick or whatever. I said that was a better percentage than if Markkanen was going to play tonight.
Hey-o!
And I thought it was a good line.
It was a good line.
I thought of it as I was rambling, as I often do.
It's-
So I'll repeat it here. Yeah. But I'm really excited now that the dust has settled on the season and everything, and to be able to look at what is available to these guys, management,
yeah, there's options out there, right?
and they've never had more. I don't think they've never ever had more to be able to go and you can speed up the process of rebuild, but I want to make sure I emphasize you're not going to get out of the process of rebuild.
Those are two different things.
Yes.
Those are two different things.
And then you can draft best player available at 3, and then if you wanted at 5, maybe you can address need. I said, yeah, well, they like this Fears, the Oklahoma kid. I can tell you that much.
Not big on need.
Well,
I know this is where
if
I
need
totally
is
buy.
great, you take it.
This is where I totally buy. It's positionless basketball, and even point guards. There's still a little bit of. There are some players who are true 5s, right? Rudy Gobert can't do anything else. He's a true 5. He's nothing else. The one, he was pretty shifty,
Well,
but there's a little something to it. Everything else is
He has to
positionless.
shoot.
He does.
The one is no longer come up, hop, stop, bounce, pass, layup.
Off stop.
Right. That doesn't exist anymore. The one has to be able to fill it up.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that, then you've really got something. If you've got a 1 where you know can set up the offense
Mm-hmm.
and fill it up, but doesn't necessarily have to fill it up.
Well, I like what Locke said when he was on with you last week, and we replayed it this morning. He said he was saying how Booker only ran 14 pick and rolls at Kentucky. Like, can you run the pick and roll or not? Because that is initiating the offense. That is the role of the point guard, and you do have to be able to shoot if they go under. If they go under and you can't make the shot, then you are a reserve in the NBA at best, and you might be on your way to playing in some other league.
Well, I can tell you with fair level of confidence that they like the Oklahoma kid. And they might not be as high on Ace Bailey as others are.
I've been wondering about the Rutgers kid. How much do you have to win in college? You know, if you're looking for, like, when you go back and do the redraft thing, like, if Simmons is the number 1 pick, if you're the number 1 pick and you don't get your team to the NCAA tournament, that's now locally, Stockton's a great example, didn't get Gonzaga to the NCAA tournament. Okay, you're in what at that point was a 1-bid league, and you're not the number 1 pick. So if you're drafting 5th, maybe 3rd, but if you're drafting in the top 5, and maybe 2nd, right? If you're drafting in the top 5, how much do the players have to be held accountable for winning? And you probably have to dive into games and look at some of what was done there.
Well, I'll give them a little bit of a pass in that they're ones and dones.
Mm-hmm.
If they're there 3 to 4, but Simmons is a one and done.
Yeah.
The NBA missed on Simmons. And all these people, it's not just the NBA, because right now, every draft model is Cooper, Harper, Bailey. And you don't want to be the guy who doesn't list that, because it reminds me of, well, wait a second. I'm not recruiting this kid, and SC is? I better recruit him. SC doesn't put 22 guys into the NFL every year.
They have busts. Always have, always will.
Right.
Everybody does.
They had a defensive lineman was supposed to be the next. Who's the kid from Oregon's with the Giants now? Was all that? He went to
Kayvon Thibodeau.
Right, and they had a kid come out of SoCal area, and he was supposed to be the next Kayvon, who just totally destroyed Utah
I know who you're talking
in the
about.
the conference title game. Yeah, that kid, and we had on what's his face. I'm good with names this morning.
Clearly.
The
Drake Jackson?
no,
Oh, okay.
no, he's a defensive lineman. And who's the guy we always bring on for SC?
Ryan Abraham.
Yeah, and every year I'd ask him, "What about this dude? What about this dude?" He never materialized. We see that at quarterback. That's not that unusual. That's almost common. You go back and look at the Elite Eight spiels, and they transfer once, if not twice. But usually the defensive players, an
defensive
edge
lineman,
rusher. I want to say his name was Foreman,
But he's got to beat the guy in front of him.
yeah.
I was just looking up Corey Foreman.
Yeah, I was going to say Corey Foreman. And he never made it, right? So these draft lists now, who wants to be the guy who doesn't have Harper going second? You lose all sorts of credibility. So when I say the NBA missed on Simmons, I'm not just talking about New Jersey / Brooklyn. I'm talking about everybody because everybody had him as the guy.
Corey Foreman, now at Fresno State.
Yeah, right. And yeah, he was supposed to be all that at SC. I think was he a Long Beach kid, and he was going to come in there and be the next Thibodeau.
Corona Centennial.
Oh, that's close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
So it never worked, and everybody had him. Every recruiting service. Oh my gosh, SC got this kid. He's going to be LT light.
When a lot of this stuff happens, and I think we've seen it with Simmons, this is where getting into the whole personality profile. You do it roughly when you talk about, I watch their body language, right? And I got a gut instinct, or I know this person has a chip on their shoulder and they're going to stay motivated. But if you ran a team, you'd have to go 50 times deeper than that. Now, they're not going to let you sit down one-on-one or run through some
If they knew what they were doing and knew it was right, I got a gut instinct. Now I have a gut and a gut instinct.
Well, your gut instinct's bigger and better because the gut is bigger and better.
Maybe so. Have you finished those donuts in there?
But you're on the right. You're on the right
Hold on,
path when
donuts,
you
what?
talk about those things. But all the physical stuff aside, you got to know that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard it out of the mouths of the
Babes.
No,
Oh.
out of the mouths of NBA decision makers. Like that player had all the physical tools. They were too immature to make it in the NBA. It was an immaturity issue.
Yeah, I remember we were debating who Mitchell or Simmons Rookie of the Year. Well, 1,000 out of 1,000 would take Mitchell right now.
Yeah. Right.
But
And for a couple of years,
the game would take
but
Mitchell.
Simmons didn't really. He got off on the right foot there, but then he cracked
He's a
and
total
couldn't bounce
flop.
back. I know.
Absolute flop.
But after 1 year, you had no idea that this would be the story at this point, and yet it looks written. It doesn't look like there's any coming back from it.
But that's what Jay-Z and Ainge and the rest of them,
Right.
that's what they get paid to do, man.
To get back where this started, I like that marketing deal. I like the concept, but they got to make the best deal. And what else is out there?
Well,
but
there's-
if that's one they make, I can see the upside to it.
It's beyond just making the best deal. Then you got to make the best picks.
That too.
So it's a multiple step process.
100%.
That's what makes it so fascinating. And we just sit here and there's no pressure on us. We just second guess.
Yep.
Oh, that sucked. Oh, that was brilliant. Basically, they decide what we say.
True story.
And I'll be the first to admit, I hope we're saying that was awesome.
That was a brilliant move.
I would love to be in the Western
Gobert.
Conference Finals now, breaking down Game 4 with the Jazz.
I remember when they announced Gobert. I was standing
Who's
in the
this
back of the
Gobert
room.
dude?
I was standing there, I didn't know. And they did it in that old press conference room, and they've reconfigured so that space doesn't exist as that anymore. And Dennis Lindsey was up there, and most of the conversations about Mitchell, sort of passing reference, and Locke was standing by the door. There's a little radio booth off to the side, and Locke was standing by the door, and he had his arms folded, and everyone's still listening, and Locke's over there doing this, nodding up and down.
He's like Santa Claus. He knew.
He did know. He did know something. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and he goes, he could be really good. He won't be really good right away. There's no way he can be good right away, but he could be really good in the long run.
And he wasn't.
No.
He wasn't.
He went to the G League. What? Why are you stuck
He
on-
wasn't.
Why is that relevant? But trade the well-preserved Lowry Markkanen. 14,000 career minutes. He could have 10 good years of minutes on him,
Yeah.
right?
And
27,
he's a
play
good
till he's
player.
37.
Sure.
Yeah, and he's got the size and he can shoot it. All right, it's a valuable asset if they decide to make the move. DJ and PK, David Smoke, host on 365 Sports in Waco, Texas, the spring football tour, the Baylor Bears, and David Smoke will be bringing the energy in 15 minutes right here on The Zone.